to get them. Thank you.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity, before giving evidence today, to refresh your memory from the records that we have that relate to BGD?
Yes, I have.
And you have read the statement that she provided to the Royal Commission?
I have.
What you say in your own statement for the Commission is that your memory of events surrounding her case are limited because of the passage of time. But do we take it from that you do have an independent recollection of BGD as a child?
Not really, no, I haven't.
When you looked at the notes that were made by you and others, did it refresh your memory somewhat in relation to your dealings with her?
No, they're refreshed as far as they were my notes, but I haven't. They really cannot get any clear recollection.
You know that BGD was allocated to you for you to assist her in some form of community placement.
That's right. I drew that conclusion from the notes.
From a document which is labelled BGD 8, there's an indication of who was involved in BGD's life as at the 31st of March 1979. Where there's a note relating to her admission that says absconded Kildonan. And it notes up there social worker Jay Lyons and Brian Fitzgerald. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Youth officer T. Best.
Yes.
Can I just get some indication as at March 1979, at that stage, your job title was as a welfare officer?
Mm-hmm.
Regional
That's
welfare
right.
officer, correct?
Yes.
And you said earlier, before the lunch break, that you reported to a senior social worker.
Yes.
Was the senior social worker Jay Lyons, or was that somebody else?
James, it was Ron Tiffin.
It was Ron...
Jay Lyons.
All right.
Tiffin?
Okay, you mentioned him in your statement. So was the
Yep.
team at that stage in March 1979, yourself as the regional officer, Jay Lyons as a social worker, a youth officer called Jay Best, and then you would report up the chain, if necessary, to the senior social worker?
That's Jay Lyons and T. Best were employed at Winlaton.
Right.
They weren't part of the regional team.
But how were you supposed to work with them as the regional team officer?
I maintain contact, and this is, as I've written in my statement, that I'm sure that I'd maintain contact with them either by visiting or by telephone. That was the way it worked in terms, and I think I also put in my statement too that at the time when a young woman was placed in Winlaton, that Winlaton took a primary role in usually in that young person's life at that point in time, and much of the case planning was influenced by the people in Winlaton.
I anticipate that we'll hear from Ms Lyons later that there were weekly meetings in respect to the children who she had charge of. Did you ever attend any of the weekly meetings at Winlaton?
I can't recall. Sorry about that.
We know the Royal Commission is aware that not all that some of the documents relating to BGD are no longer available after the passage of time, but the documents we have available suggest that you were involved in her life at least from March till June 1979. Are you able to assist us with the timeline? Do you remember whether it was more than that 3-month period?
Well, it wasn't more. I think, no, it wouldn't have been any longer than that.
At what point would your involvement with BGD have stopped?
I think it would have been sometime in June 1979.
Why is that? Why would it have stopped at that stage?
Well, my memory, then it's more, I've drawn the conclusion that my family and I were moving into a new house around about the 19th, 20th of June, and I started at Lilydale shortly thereafter.
Just before the break, I was asking you whether or not you remembered visiting BGD at a temporary accommodation service with the name Bunyip in the title. Do you actually remember that hostel or accommodation place?
No, I don't.
Could you have a look at an attachment to BGD's statement, which is BGD 4? And I'm going to read to you from a case note which has various dates in it throughout March 1979.
Right.
Do you see there that there's a typed notification of your name down the bottom of that, Brian Fitzgerald, Welfare Officer?
Yes.
And there are various dates listed on it, but a notation there on the 8th of March, 9th of March, 16th of March, etc., going through to the 30th of March.
That's right, yes.
And the first notation on the 8th of March 1979 says H/V Bunyip. Do I take it that that's home visit to Bunyip? And the first notation on the 8th of March 1979 says H/V Bunyip. Do I take it that that's home visit to Bunyip?
Yes.
To see BGD?
It would.
Is continually saying that she doesn't want to be left in the same room as him. According to BGD, visiting Kildonan then, seems angry with father, is continually saying that she doesn't want to be left in the same room as him. According to BGD, Mrs. Pearl has divulged information. So that's your early involvement with BGD, is that right? BGG is BGD's father. So that's your early involvement with BGD, is that right?
Yes, I think it might have even been a little bit before then, in terms when I was when she was.
The visit to Bunyip on the 16th of March 1979. There's a phone call in March 1979 for Connie Pearl. BGD was visiting her at Swinburne House today, and she felt it was time for us all to meet, rediscussing BGD and her relationship with her father. Who was Connie Pearl at that stage?
From the information I've read, she was a worker with, I think, the Victorian Aid or something like that.
Do you remember her?
Society. No, I don't.
And sorry, you were going to tell us what that acronym stood for?
I think the Victorian Aid or something like that.
Do you remember her?
Society. No, I don't.
And sorry, you were going to tell us what that acronym stood for? Or Victorian Aid?
Carolyn Pearl had a long history, a fairly long history with BGD.
Would you have been keen then to understand what Carolyn Pearl had information about?
Yes, I would have.
So you see there from the notes that on the 20th of March there was an interview between yourself and Carolyn Pearl and BGD?
Yes. Yes.
And it centred around the discussion with BGD about her father?
That's right.
And she appears to have told you and Carolyn on that day, or I'll just read to you the notation, she spoke of BGG, that's her father, taking advantage of her sexually when he was still living with the family, and that he was beginning to make these demands on her again. She didn't want to see her father for a while, but couldn't bring herself to the point where she could tell BGG. You accept from that note that BGD disclosed to you that she was being sexually abused by her father?
Yes, I wouldn't.
That BGD disclosed to you that she was being sexually abused by her father?
Yes, I wouldn't have written it otherwise. Sorry.
Are you able, from your reading of the notes, to understand what response you had to that disclosure?
Reading the notes where it says we had the areas were explored considerably but didn't resolve, as I have assumed that we sat for some time trying to work through some of the whatever was going on at that time. But other than that, I don't know, I'm sorry.
Did you believe BGD when she told you that she was being sexually abused by her father?
I would have, at that time, and now I have to go by the notes, and by the notes that I've written and perused, I would say yes, I had a belief there.
As a result, I withdraw that. Can you turn now to BGD 8? And this is a typed notation which is titled Classification Action Sheet.
Yes.
Dated the 18th of April 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Your name appears on that under social worker J. Lyons, Brian Fitzgerald,
Yep.
Youth Officer T. Best. Did you type this document?
No, it's an internal document for Winlaton.
Under Summary of Assessment Information and Observations, it reads, BGD is starting to make friends on section but confides in chosen staff only. Presents as a very confused and disturbed girl who may need professional counselling, re-decision making and re-education in social skills. Hope to determine whether stories are fabricated or true. Girl who may need professional counselling, re-decision making and re-education in social skills when she was disclosing.
No.
Your Honour, if I can object here, in fairness to the witness, he's said to counsel assisting that this is not his note.
Your Honour, I press that the witness can answer the question. It notes there that it's not his note, I accept that, but the social worker is noted to be G. Lyons and Brian Fitzgerald, so it appears this documentation has been prepared on the basis of information that may have been provided from those people.
I'll let Mr Fitzgerald endeavour to clarify that, Mr George.
Thank you.
Basis of information that may have been provided from those people.
I'll let Mr Fitzgerald.
That line that reads, hope to determine whether stories or fabricated are true. And the question I ask you was, having read that, does that suggest to you that you may not have believed BGD?
No, it doesn't.
Given that you did believe BGD when she disclosed the abuse by her father, did you call or contact the police? Believe BGD when she disclosed the abuse by her father, did you call or contact the police?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Why not?
And because of my inexperience at the time, if you take it that I had only been in the position for a very short period of time, I would have gone with that information to my supervisor and discussed it with him or somebody senior to actually get some sort of direction as to where we needed to go with that sort of information.
You say you would have done that. You have no independent memory of doing that, do you?
No, I haven't, no.
And your senior social worker at that time was Ron Tiffin, as you've told us.
Yes.
Was there some particular policy in relation to reporting accounts of sexual abuse to the senior social worker?
Not that I can recall. It would have been that any sort of situation that arose with me as a practitioner that needed some sort of support or direction or clarification, I would have gone to and encouraged anybody to do that, to go to their supervising officer to actually get some sort of clarification.
In then seeing BGD?
Look, I can't answer that because I don't know.
Was there, I withdraw that, you've already...
Look, I can't answer that because I don't know.
Was there, I withdraw that, you've already noted that there were no written policies that you're aware of at that time in relation to dealing with accounts of child sexual abuse. Was there an informal understanding as to when police were to be notified when sexual abuse was disclosed?
Not that I can recall.
Do you recall whether a decision was made by yourself or members of the team assisting BGD at that stage as to when she should be permitted to see her father or vice versa?
No. Other than looking at the plan that was put in, it was most probably supporting BGD's wish at the time to keep father at arm's length and to actually...
As to whether or not she would see her father rather than putting in boundaries to make sure that... Do you agree that the plan appears to leave it up to BGD as to whether or not she would see her? Are you able to tell us, based on your memory of the time...
Yes, the way it's written, yes, I would.
Are you able to tell us it was taken seriously by yourself and other members of the department, whether or not a disclosure of incest, as this was taken seriously by yourself and other members of the department?
Well, I'd have to say if it was me, it would have been taken seriously.
Was it viewed by you as serious an occurrence as a rape? I withdraw that. Was it viewed by you as a rape of BGD by her father?
I couldn't answer that, I'm sorry.
Why is it that you're unable to answer that?
Well, you're asking me to actually view something that happened from today. I certainly from today have viewed that as being a rape, but I can't talk about 36 years ago.
Let me see if this question is any more useful. You say to the Royal Commission that certainly today you would see any disclosure of the kind BGD was making then as her father was raping her. Was there a different attitude towards incest in 1979?
Ooh, I don't know. I'm talking for myself. As far as I was concerned, it was illegal and should not have occurred.
Okay. From you refreshing your memory from the notes we have available, you would be aware.
Yes, from Winlaton, that was in June, was it?
Yes, it was. I withdraw that. There's a meeting, a notation of a meeting on the 22nd of May, 1979. I want to deal with that one first. Did you become aware of that meeting in May 1979?
I can't recall if I may or may not. I really can't recall that. I'm sorry.
Can you have a look at a document which is titled BGD 17?
Could you ask?
And I've just been asked to read the document ID to make that easier subsequently, which is DHS.3002.323.0104_E_R. You see that document now,
yes,
sir?
I do.
It notes date of last meeting 22/5/1979. Again, it identifies down the bottom of that page community supervisor as J Lyons/B Fitzgerald, South Melbourne.
Yep.
Can you, and the youth officer is T. Best, are you able to tell the Royal Commission who typed this document?
It was an internal document from Winlaton, I'm assuming, because T. Best, it's their review action sheet, which is their weekly review that came out of their weekly review, from my understanding.
Would you have read their weekly review documentation, given your role?
I would have read in terms of if it got to South Melbourne, I may not have read it until it was sent from Winlaton to actual the inner urban area, and I don't recall reading this one.
So it's possible you read it and you have no memory of it?
Yeah.
Would you have been consulted as to whether or not BGD could meet with her father?
I would have hoped I would have been consulted. I have no memory of it. And at that stage, when I read that, it looks like Michael Groom was making a lot of decisions in relation to contact and leave for BGD.
Do you remember Michael Groom, who was a psychologist?
No, I remember the name, but I don't remember the person.
Having read this, you would be aware that, in fact, BGD's father was allowed to visit her and Winlaton, and the notation taken there is father visited, a sensual visit, very close-knit, not normal father-daughter relationship, oblivious to everyone, father saw Michael Groom, etc. Reading that now, I'm asking you to reflect, of course, on 1979, but would you have thought it was appropriate in 1979 for BGD to see her father, given the disclosure she had made?
I would have to say strongly question it.
Did you, Mr. Fitzgerald?
I don't recall.
How would you have questioned it?
Well, with the concerns in reading that, if we're talking about it, I would have to be really convinced that it was in the safest possible position for BGD to be in relation to, and would be taking advice most probably from the therapist at the time, who would have hoped to. Sorry.
So in the normal course of events, in the way in which you worked in this role, how would you have communicated that? Back to the workers inside Winlaton.
Well, if I was visiting them and we met together, then obviously it would be in a meeting. If not, it's on the telephone. It would have been. I would have hoped that they actually, at least make contact with the region to get the region's opinion on that, because it was a case planning decision.
So given that BGD was permitted to see her father at that stage, in spite of the fact that he had raped her, doesn't that suggest that there were different attitudes towards incest at that time, in 1979?
Well, I'd have to say that there had to be difference in terms of, if you read the information here, that some people believed her and some people didn't. And they didn't start from the position of belief.
But also today, Mr Fitzgerald, you would accept, wouldn't you, that for BGD to see her father again, for that to be sanctioned at Winlaton when he had raped her, put her in a position of serious danger emotionally and physically, didn't it?
Well, I'd have to, in reading that, yes, I would have to.
by today's standards, it's pretty horrifying, isn't it, that a girl who had been raped by her father is then, that a visit with him is then facilitated in a centre where she's supposed to be kept safe?
I'd have to say it wouldn't happen. I would hope it doesn't happen.
Are you horrified that it did happen in 1979 at a time when you were the regional caseworker?
I've been reading the information since getting this, in terms of the first time I had any understanding of this situation when I actually received this documentation, and I'd have to say overall I was pretty disturbed in terms of where the case went.
Did you
after my...
Sorry, please finish.
No, I suppose after into the future for BGD.
Did you become aware while you were the regional caseworker that a letter had been written to BGD's... Oh, I withdraw that. Did you become aware of any meetings between caseworkers and BGD's mother or father?
No, not that I can recall.
You noted earlier that you had read the statement of BGD. Can I take you to paragraph 38 of that statement?
Yes.
Do you see that BGD notes that on the 15th of February 1979, I'm reading from paragraph 36 to put it in context.
Yes.
On the 15th of February 1979, I ran away and refused to return home. I was placed in temporary accommodation at Gentle Bunyip. A few days later, I ran away from Gentle Bunyip but returned the next day. During this period, Brian Fitzgerald was my social worker. My general recollection of Fitzgerald is that he seemed more concerned with what my mother wanted and what suited her. This is how most of the department staff seemed to me. What do you say about that?
I could, from a young person's perspective, that's most probably how it could be interpreted. My role at that stage was to try to get an understanding of the whole picture, and obviously the family I needed to get an understanding of the family if I'm going by the notes here. But I certainly can understand and appreciate how a young person might interpret that.
Is it fair to say that in 1979 you didn't have an understanding of the serious harm that was being done to BGD as a result of being raped by her father?
I could only see that had to have damaging. And I think in one of my documents that's been the Commission has, is that I thought that she was, I can't remember exactly, but certainly a person who really needed support.
She also needed to be kept safe away from a predator like her father, didn't she?
Yes, certainly.
And you will have read in her statement where she says that the day that her father visited in Winlaton was one of the greatest betrayals of her life.
Yes.
And she gave oral evidence today that she felt betrayed by the system. At that stage, during a visit in May, you were part of a system that was supposed to be caring for her. You accept that?
Yes, I do.
And you accept that because BGD was not kept safe from her father by the department, she went on to be raped by him for many, many years?
Could you run that by me again? I'm sorry.
You would accept that because BGD was not kept safe away from her father as a child, she went on to be raped by him for many, many years?
Yes, that certainly had to be the reason, it had to be the major reason for that.
Looking back on your short involvement with BGD in 1979, how do you feel about it, knowing what happened to her subsequently and at the time?
As I said before, I was really disturbed when I read the information, and I really would have, if I could have, and wished to have gone back to that period and then hopefully have done a bit more. It's words now, but it's I feel so disturbed and sad for this person now.
I have nothing further, Mr Fitzgerald. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr O'Brien.
Good afternoon, sir. My name's O'Brien and I represent BGD. Do you accept now that you were hopelessly unqualified to deal with a young person in BGD's position coming to you claiming incest when you did in 1979?
Oh, but certainly I was very inexperienced and not qualified, and I don't think very many people around at the time had any expertise as far as working with children who have been sexually abused.
You've had an opportunity to read the annexures and attachments to BGD's statement.
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with me that there is a theme throughout those documents that seems to be a trivialisation of what had happened to her by the department and by those at Winlaton?
I'd find that very hard to answer in terms, because I think in some instances there is some seriousness, but certainly I would agree in terms of saying that her time in Winlaton and even possibly after was one of that could be questioned.
Well, I'll come back to it. I understand you're saying you don't have a personal recollection now as to BGD's position when you saw her in 1979. I understand that. You appreciate that, don't you? But you've had the opportunity of reading the documents that spell out how your department and how the workers within Winlaton treated her and how they dealt with her. You've had that opportunity, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And I want to suggest to you again that there's a theme within those documents, that suggest that she was being blamed in some way, shape or form for what had happened to her.
It certainly shows up in some of those documents, yeah.
And there's a theme within those documents, sir, I'd ask you to accept, that she was being urged to take responsibility for what had happened to her. Do you accept that?
I would accept in some of those documents, yes, there would have been, yes.
And the responsibility she seems to have been asked to take is to separate herself from her father.
Mm.
You can see that theme in those documents, can't you?
Yes, yes.
And what that really all comes down to is a position that your department And those who were working closely with her at Winlaton, and indeed beyond, and possibly before, took the view that she was in some way responsible for what was happening to her at her father's hands. Do you accept that that emerges from those documents?
I think I read it in a couple of documents that would question that. I think I find that very difficult to answer in terms of without being there.
Very well.
Yeah.
You spoke earlier on when Councillor Sisting was asking you questions about a form of approach or an approach that you had in dealing with young children with behavioural and emotional issues. You remember being asked about your approach?
Yes.
And you said that one of the approaches that you considered important was that children were urged to take responsibility for their behaviour. Do you remember saying
I think
that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think the operative word is urged. In terms of it, and I think in terms of saying when someone demonstrated that they were not able to handle that situation, it was the responsibility of the adult to take charge at that point in time.
Can I suggest to you that, again, with reference to those documents that you've now had the chance to examine, that was what she was being asked to do. She was being asked to take responsibility. She was being urged to take responsibility for dealing with what was happening to her by her father. Do you accept that that's the picture?
I accept in some of those documents that there were.
You said that you were very disturbed as to where this case went after I was involved. You remember saying that when Councillor Sisting was asking you some questions?
Yes.
Why? Why was it, in your view, that the case went where it went after you were involved? What happened, in your view, looking back at it now, knowing what you do know about your position, the position of others in the department and within the services that were supposed to assist? Why did it happen in the way that it did? Who's responsible?
Well, ultimately, the department is responsible in terms of that. I think, and where anyone goes, they have the responsibility, or it has the responsibility to provide what it says it's going to provide, and that's safety for children and young people who actually need that support. And at that time, I have to go that in terms of when BGD moved out of Winlaton into the hostel at Hillville, I was not involved, but when I read the document to say that she had actually been a short time after, I think had contact or had spent time with her father, I was just perplexed, really, and that's why I think the disturbance in my reason for saying I was disturbed and saddened that was in fact allowed to be happen.
You've seen that the timing of that letter that was sent to BGG, the father, occurred in the days, within days of BGD leaving Winlaton. Did you notice that?
Yes, yes.
And did you come to learn from the documents there that the involvement of Groom, Mr. Groom, the psychiatric nurse, did you also come to learn from those documents that the involvement of that particular person also ended at that time?
Ended at that time?
It ended at the time that the letter was sent, and that BGB, went from Winlaton to Hillview?
I thought there was a follow-up from in that document. Maybe I misread it by Michael Groom.
Let me be a bit blunter.
Certainly.
You might be right. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. Let me just be a bit blunter about the question. What I want to suggest to you is that there was a total absence of proper follow-up in relation to counselling and support work for BGD as you went on from Winlaton and beyond. You accept that?
Well, it certainly would appear.
And what extent of responsibility do you take as her caseworker at that time?
I wasn't her caseworker at that time.
You only recently left, hadn't you, and taken up a new job within about that same period of time. Is that right?
No, I think when she went to Hillview, that was a month or so after I moved to the new office.
So within a month of you moving to a new office, she had a new caseworker, correct?
Yes, I would hope so.
It appears that Groom's involvement then ended, correct?
Well, you're telling me I don't know if it ended or not at that point in time.
Very well.
I'm sorry.
And you agree with me that there was an absence of proper follow-up in relation to the total sort of support that she obviously needed.
Well, it certainly shows that in these documents.
I want to ask you a few questions, if I can, about Winlaton itself. Can I just take you back to the document BGD 5? You can turn that up. For those who are operating computers,
yes.
It's DHS.300.2.3.23.0145_E_R. That's a document under your hand dated the 5th of April 1979, is it not?
Yes, I think. I can't. Is it the events leading up to? Does it start off with that?
Yes.
Okay.
As it says at the bottom of that first page, you've recorded that during the afternoon of the 30th of March 1979, she telephoned the staff of the unit to tell them that she was with her father and that she would return by 6 p.m. You with me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Later that evening, a request for her to remain overnight was approved by the unit staff, who then informed me at home of the situation. You see?
Yes, I see that.
And then you've said, I expressed some concerns about her being with her father as several days earlier she'd refused to see him.
Yes.
And then it's the case that you've said you've arranged for the police to apprehend her.
I don't recall it, and I don't remember getting the police, but it certainly would have been an action that I would have tried to kick-start, certainly.
So the idea was to, by this stage, it is perfectly clear from the documents, she has revealed to you that her father is sexually assaulting her or sexually abusing her in some way. That's right?
Yes.
And you've become aware that she's staying the night in a hotel with her father. Is that right?
Yes.
And you've arranged for her to be, either you or someone in your unit has arranged for her to be apprehended by police and taken to Winlaton?
Yes.
Right. I want to take you to the last paragraph of that document, if I can.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got that there?
Yes.
Thank you. It says, although an admission to Winlaton has tried to be avoided, it now seems the only course at this stage. Do you read that?
Yes.
Do you have an independent recollection now of having written that or having thought about that?
No, I haven't.
Tell me, why was Winlaton to be avoided?
Well, Winlaton at any time, it's the same as any of the other institutions, should have been the last option in any young person's life, and the effort should have been made at all the time to try and keep young people out of those situations rather than putting them into them.
Is that because you and your co-workers recognised it to be an inappropriate placement for a ward?
Well, it was inappropriate because they were taken out of the community.
And placed with children who were before the criminal justice system.
I don't know in Winlaton if that. Yeah, I don't know in Winlaton if that was the case. Whether or not they separated those people.
Thank you for that. I want to go back in time. I'm sorry to do that. I want to go back in time and ask you about your first contact with BGD, and in particular the handover into your carriage of her case. You with me?
Yeah, I'm with you, yes.
So it was in around about February 1979 that you took over her case?
Yes.
She was already a ward of the state?
Yes.
And it appears that she, by that stage, was at the Gentle Bunyip at Clifton Hill?
Yeah. Yes.
And you came to understand that she had a worker appointed to her, or who was working in any event with her, from the Victorian Children's Aid Society. Is that right?
It was something like that, yeah.
And that person's name was Carolyn Pearl.
Yes.
Do you remember having a look at files, paperwork, documentation provided by that organisation, the Victorian Children's Aid Society?
I don't recall, no, I'm sorry.
Do you recall if Pearl informed you that she had been informed, or someone from her organisation had been informed, that there had been a full incestuous relationship between BGD and her father for the 18 months prior to that time?
No, I was not aware of that.
When you came to make yourself aware of BGD's case, I don't know if you've got an independent recollection. If you do say so, did you make efforts to find out about the family, the mother, the father, the siblings, etc.?
Well, that would have been, part of my role, and I think earlier in the piece where BGD thought I only thought about her mother, in terms that I would have thought that at the stage there I would have tried to understand what the family situation was about.
Right. But you don't have an independent recollection of that?
No, I don't.
You've said in your statement something to the effect that you don't have a recollection of having contact with the father. Is that right?
Yes.
Is it the case you don't have a recollection of the background of the father as well? At that time in 1979?
Well, at that time, I would have to say yes, because I don't have a recollection of it. I'm sorry.
To assist you, were you told that he was a very heavy drinker, an alcoholic?
No, I gathered that there's a where I tried to trace the history. That's where I would have got my information from.
That was known to the department, wasn't it?
Yes, it would have been, because it
was also known to the department in as early as that 1979 that he had a personality disorder, correct? So much is clear from the documents.
Without the document in front of me, I have to agree with you.
It's also clear from the department documents back in 1979 when you took over the case, I suggest to you that he had a history of aggression and violence towards the family and family members.
Yes. I would assume I don't have a memory of it, I'm sorry.
And it was also the case, I suggest to you, that it was known to the department that he had a connection to violent gangs and associates.
That I don't know, I'm sorry.
Nothing further, thank you.
Mr. George.
Thank you, Your Honour. Your Honour, my name is Andrew George and I represent Mr Fitzgerald. Mr Fitzgerald, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Terrific. I just want to take you quickly through a couple of things that have been raised with you in an attempt to clarify a couple of matters. When you came to work for the department, you said you simply responded to an advertisement and you got the position at Baltara.
Yes.
And that I think you described it as there was nothing of use in any on-the-job training you had. Is that correct?
Yes.
One of the other witnesses who's been before this commission described the course that you undertook in 1977, the Certificate of Child Care, as a Mickey Mouse course. Is that a fair description, if colourful?
I would think so, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now, when you came to move into your new position in 1979 at South Melbourne, you'd effectively just simply done that Mickey Mouse course as training for that position?
I'm sorry, I missed that. It's breaking up the audio.
I'm sorry. When you moved into your position in 1979, you had only completed that course. Is that correct?
That's right.
Can I ask you this, a broader question? What's your understanding of the success of the department in obtaining and retaining employees in the 70s?
That's a pretty big question,
Well,
Mr. George. You might like to narrow that down a little bit.
Thank you. Is it the case, from your experience, that during that period of the 1970s, the department were desperate to get staff, that they had trouble filling their positions?
That's my understanding.
And has that continued to be the case through your experience of some 40 years with the department, to maybe greater or lesser extents at various times?
I think it's a high pressure position, and therefore you have a high turnover. So it's not always easy to get what you would always regard as the best possible staff in those positions.
Okay, thank you.
In 1979, I think positions were created like the welfare officer to actually fill a position, to fill those positions.
So So the department couldn't get qualified social workers to fill those positions, so it filled them with...
That's certainly my understanding.
Okay. Now, we've heard, and it's accepted, that you first came into contact with BGD sometime mid-February, and that contact ceased sometime in June when you moved to another regional office. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, you referred by Mr O'Brien to a document called BGD5, which was the document which began events leading up to and subsequent to admission of BGD to Winlaton. Can I summarise it? That document reflects, and I accept that you don't have an independent memory of this, but that document seems to reflect your concern, in particular about her absconding from the community placements and returning to her father in the context of you having been told 10 days earlier that he had been sexually abusing her. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I want you to have a look at a document that you've been referred to earlier called BDG7. This is a document that's headed up First Term Review, 6 April 1979. Do you have that with you now?
I have.
In the second paragraph, it reads, Brian Fitzgerald, Department CWS, feels that BGD may not ask to leave Winlaton for some time and that perhaps she should stay there until she wants to leave. Is that concern that you've expressed there, do you think, based on any discussions you may have had with BGD about her feeling safe at Winlaton in the context of that safety, meaning that she was away from her father?
Yes. I would have thought if she felt safer in Winlaton, that had some benefit for her at that point in time.
I'm sorry to go backward in the numbers, but can we look at BDG 4 now? And that's the notations of various interactions between yourself and BDG from the 8th of March 1979 to the 30th of March 1979. And can I take you to about the middle of the page to the entry on the 19th of March 1979?
Yes.
Now, this is when you receive a phone call from Connie Pearl. And Ms Pearl at that stage says that, quoting from the document, she felt that it was time for us all to meet re-discussing BGD's relationship with father.
Yes.
Now, you've made an appointment for 9:30 or 10 o'clock the next morning. Was that a reflection, do you think, of the seriousness with which you took that phone call?
Well, it does to me reading that, yes.
Okay. Then if we look at the next entry, the 20th of March of 1979, and this has been referred to by Counsel Assisting and Mr O'Brien. But I just want to look at the part that's headed up Plan. And that reads, have father remain out of the picture until BGD is at least settled and or transfer of BGD to other temporary accommodation until the move to Kindonan is effected.
Yes.
Does that show, and I know, again, you don't have an independent memory, but do you think that shows a consciousness on your part of the need to keep her away from her father in the light of that disclosure to you?
Yes.
And I finally want to take you to a document that's BGD 24. I said finally too early, I apologise. This is a document that's the hostels referral form.
All right, yes.
Do you have that there?
We've got it now.
Okay.
Thank you.
On the front page in column 3, referral date is 25 June 1979.
Yes.
To the left of that, in the middle of the page, referring agent, your name's typed in but crossed out, and in handwriting, Bridget Burns is written in.
Yes.
Got that? does that suggest to you that this document was produced by you pretty much right at the time you were handing over BGD's case to Bridget Burns, who was taking your position, or alternatively, if not taking your position, certainly taking on the role for BGD?
Yeah, it suggests to me that I was certainly transferring it back to, I don't know if it was Bridget Burns or to the senior social worker at the time, but certainly it looks like Bridget Burns picked up the case after me.
And if I can take you to the second page of that document.
Yes.
Under 13, young person's relationship with family is the heading.
Mm-hmm.
First sentence reads, BGD's relationship with her father is complex. She claims that her father has an emotional hold over her and has taken advantage of her sexually in recent years. And you're there, are you not, stating in a continuing form on a referral basis one of the significant issues in her life and something that should be of concern to those taking the referral?
Yes.
And that's really the point of the referral form, is it not? To ensure that when a young person is referred outside the department, that those receivers of the referral at least have the basic important information about the young person before them. Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And it still would be today.
And to go down further in that paragraph, 5 lines from the bottom of that paragraph, it reads thus: placement with her father would appear impossible in the foreseeable future, as it is felt such a situation would be too destructive for BGD. You see that?
Yes.
And that's obviously a reflection of your view about the destructive nature of the sexual assaults that were occurring upon her by her father.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to take you, Mr Fitzgerald, thank you for your patience, to one further document. And I do apologise to Your Honour and the Commissioners. I don't have my reference number from the materials, the bundles, has been cut off, and I do apologise that I can't reference it properly to you in asking this question. If I could describe it, and hopefully that will be suitable to Your Honour.
So it's not one of the marked attachments?
Not a marked attachment. It's from the bundle of documents that the Department have provided to the Commission. It's a departmental instruction dated 22 June 1993. So it's right out of the time context of this. And it's just a small point I wanted to make. Thank you, Your Honour. So, Mr Fitzgerald, I'm going to read you from a document that's from Health and Community Services as it was then. It's headed Departmental Instruction 93/8, dated 22 June 1993. The heading of the instruction is Reporting Allegations of Physical or Sexual Assault to the Police. So it's a 1993 document.
Is there an identified author?
It says Contact Karen Cleave, Director, Disability Services Division, Your Honour. And the author, in fact, it's signed off by Dr John Patterson, then Secretary of Health and Community Services. I just want to
actually physically signed off by Dr Patterson?
It is signed. Well, it's signed. It's got his name underneath. I think it's his signature. On page 3 of that direction at 2.4, and this is under section 2, the heading of section 2 is reporting the allegation to the police. And at 2.4, there's 3 paragraphs that I want to read to you. Responsibility for reporting, 2.4. Responsibility for reporting allegations of assault to the police, and assault in this context includes sexual assault as the document reads, lies with the most senior staff member in the relevant work area, such as a house unit or ward, present at the time the allegation is made. The worker who first becomes aware of the allegation must advise the most senior staff member in the relevant work area of the details of the allegation. The worker who first becomes aware of the allegation must be available to assist police with any investigation. And that's the end of that section 2.4. Now, essentially, when you gave evidence to the Commission, you indicated that on the 20th of March 1979, you believe, although you have no independent memory, that you would have advised your senior supervising social worker of the disclosure. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
No further questions. Sorry, Your Honour, I apologise, Counsel Sisting. My friend at the bar table has assisted me greatly by providing the document I'm referring to. It has the reference number
with
on it.
With an ID.
So if I could read that.
Just read that out onto the transcript.
Thank you, Your Honour. DHS.3123.008.0011. Thank you, Your Honour.
Thank you, Your Honour. Can I return to the document DHS.3002.323.0068_E_R, which is the referral form, which was the second last document the witness was taken to? Mr Fitzgerald, this is the document which is titled Family and Adolescent Services Division Voluntary Hostel Scheme that you acknowledged you must have written or typed, and then your name is crossed out of it. Oops, we've lost
yes.
this as the referral agent. Can you still hear me, Mr Fitzgerald?
Yes, I can.
Okay. That form is in the introduction under the heading Please Note. Reads, the hostel's referral form is to be used whenever a referral is made to a voluntary youth hostel, which operates under the Family and Adolescent Services Division Voluntary Hostel Scheme. This form provides essential information for purposes of assessment and ongoing care. It is important that the form is completed fully by the referral source. You acknowledged earlier in response to your lawyer's question that you agreed it was a handover form that was important to highlight information in relation to your client?
Yes.
So you agree that this was, as a handover form, important to encapsulate the main problem for the child who you had been supervising?
Yes.
And at paragraph 13, and for the child who you had been supervising?
Yes.
And at paragraph 13, under the subheading Young Person's Relationship with the Family, you write, BGD's relationship with her father is complex. She claims that her father has an emotional hold over her and has taken advantage of her sexually in recent years. You said earlier that you believed BGD when she told you about the sexual abuse by her father.
Yes.
Why is that written there as she claims that her father has an emotional hold over her and has taken advantage of her sexually?
I would have to say it's badly written by me.
Requested help in coping with her father and is currently receiving ongoing treatment from Michael Groom of the Children's Court Clinic. She seems to maintain a love-hate relationship with both parents, etc. This next bit was read out to you. If you go over the page to paragraph 15, the reason for the hostel referral was written as it's felt that BGD still requires the support of a hostel situation because of the existing father-daughter relationship difficulties. Do you agree with me that that document does not properly encapsulate BGD's major problem at that stage of her life?
Yes, that possibly it could have been articulated a lot better.
But do you agree with me that what it does is place the focus on BGD and her father and their relationship rather than what BGD's father was doing to her, i.e. raping her?
Yeah, possibly, yes.
Do you agree with me that that suggests that what my learned friend Mr O'Brien put to you earlier is true, that as at 1979, in the way that BGD was being looked after, there was a trivialisation of what was happening to her in terms of her father's actions?
I would honestly say that in reading all the documents that followed through, that there's a sense that there were people who didn't believe her.
Not just that, though, Mr. Fitzgerald. What I'm putting to you is, because you typed this document, didn't you?
No, I couldn't type. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, if you could turn to the last page of it, or the second last page, under paragraph 19, do you see that you've signed the document?
Yes, I have, yes.
Okay. So you agree that the information that is contained in that document is information that you have caused to be typed there?
Yes.
Right. And do you agree that that documentation does not adequately reflect the seriousness of the situation for BGD?
I certainly would say that it should have been articulated a lot better.
Do you agree that it doesn't adequately reflect the harm that her father posed to her and the future risk?
No, it didn't, although I think I tried to, in a limited way, tried to express that in paragraph 13 in terms of saying that she should not, placement with him should not be there.
Yes, and what it says is that because of the father-daughter relationship, the mother-daughter relationship seems seemingly affected also. She's requested help in coping with her father and is currently receiving ongoing treatment from Mr. Groom.
Yeah.
She seems to maintain a love-hate relationship with both parents. But there's nothing there that suggests, doesn't it, that she can't continue to see her father. She cannot have any access to her father.
Oh, with respect, Your Honour, I hate to interrupt, but the next sentence should be read by counsel assisting, in my view. If she wants to put the proposition she's putting to him, she should put the next sentence and then put the proposition. My submission.
I'm happy to do that, Your Honour. So I'll read that to you in full, Mr. Fitzgerald. Because of the father-daughter relationship, the mother-daughter relationship has seemingly been affected also. She has requested help in coping with her father and is currently receiving ongoing treatment from Michael Groom of the Children's Court Clinic. She seems to maintain a love-hate relationship with both parents. Placement with her father would appear to be impossible in the foreseeable future, as it is felt such a situation would be too destructive for BGD. Current contact with her father is conducted in the controlled environment of Winlaton. Placement with her mother is not possible at this stage, but may be considered for future case planning. Having read that, do you agree that there's nothing in there that indicates that BGD must be kept away from her father at that stage?
No, other than the fact that she was, the current situation was that she was having contact, and at Winlaton, but it was supposedly in a controlled situation.
Okay.
There is some sense in there that father needs to be kept, or BGD needs to be as safe as possible if she is to have contact with her father. I don't necessarily agree that she should have had contact with her father.
Do you agree that it was part of your responsibility to assist in decision-making about whether she should have contact with her father?
Yes.
And there's nothing in this document that says she should have no contact with her father? This document suggests she should have supervised contact with her father if it is to occur.
I said it's currently understood I think in that document that she's having controlled contact.
There's nothing in this document that indicates the gravity of what was happening to her. That is, that she was a girl who had been raped by her father previously and was at risk.
I agree. I agree with that. But it should have been written in a different... And I actually go back to the fact that it's a document that was written by an inexperienced worker at the time, and it should have been, before it even went out to anywhere, that should have been actually vetted by a more senior person.
The inexperienced worker you're describing is yourself, is that right?
Yes.
So do you agree that as an inexperienced worker in 1979, at the time you wrote this document, you lacked an understanding of the gravity of what was happening to BGD?
Certainly from a psychological point of view, I did, yeah.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Mr Fitzgerald, and you're now excused.
Thank you, Your Honour. No, I didn't like it. Just close the screen.
The next witness is Ms Jennifer